Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday. It is 9:15-ish Central Time, and we are right here at CSLDallas for the Sunday morning Science Mind class. My name is Tracy Brown, and I love that every Sunday we take a few minutes and we pick up the Science of Mind textbook and we read a little bit and we talk about it. And by doing that, as we go through the book in sequential order, we get to dive in a little more deeply, understand a little more fully, and then integrate it into our lives in the best way that we can. So today we are starting at the end of chapter 5. We'll be beginning to read on page 105 with the last section, A Divine Mental Picture. But I do want to go back to the beginning of the chapter just to remind you that chapter 5 is in that part of the book where Ernest Holmes is introducing us to the nature of God, the nature of the infinite intelligence, the nature of spirit, and what is going on in the expression of life as spirit. And chapter 5 is about form and effect, which Ernest Holmes referred to as body. So the earlier part of this chapter, if you are joining us for the first time in the last few weeks, you do want to go back, and the subsections in the chapter, he starts off with the definition, what is body, which is form and effect, and then that which changes, that's what body is, like the infinite never changes, but the expression of life is constantly changing. Form within the formless, cause and effect, unity and multiplicity, immortality, and then where we're beginning today, a divine mental picture. This subsection of the chapter is one paragraph, and it's not even a typical Ernest Holmes paragraph, which could be a page and a half. Right? It's one short paragraph, so let's see where that takes us. A divine mental picture, middle of page 105. As we look at the many millions of forms, all of different shape and color, and yet know that they all come from one stuff, are we not compelled to accept the fact that there is a specific cause or concrete mental image back of every idea or thing? A divine mental picture. In the subjective world, there must be a correspondent of everything in the objective world. And since the subjective world is a receptive or plastic substance, this correspondence can find its initial starting point only in real intelligence. Therefore, intelligence is the ultimate creative agency of the universe. And I'm going to read that paragraph again. And intelligence is capital I intelligence. Capital I intelligence meaning the universal mind or the wisdom, right? The infinite intelligence of the creator of all the creation and the creator of all life. So it's a short paragraph. You get to hear it a second time. Here we go. As we look at the many millions of forms, all of different shape and color, and yet know that they all come from one stuff, are we not compelled to accept the fact that there is a specific cause or concrete mental image back of every idea or thing. A divine mental picture. In the subjective world, there must be a correspondent of everything in the objective world. And since the subjective world is a receptive or plastic substance, this correspondence can find its initial starting point only in real, capital I, intelligence. Therefore, capital I, intelligence, is the ultimate creative agency of the universe. So in this paragraph, Ernest Holmes brings this chapter to a close by simply reminding us that everything that has form, everything that we interact with our physical senses, started as something invisible, a thought, an intention, a decision. And through the creative process, it becomes something that we can interact with. I'm a little bit careful about saying something physical because it is a part of the physical universe, but when we think of breathing, right, we have the experience of breathing, inhale, exhale. Our body is breathing, but our body, our physical human body, is interacting with the oxygen in the air, putting carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. And some of that's invisible, but it is part of our physical experience. It is part of the body, the result. It's not just invisible to the eye. It is part of the way nature works on the physical plane. So I'm a little careful about saying, you know, everything in idea is invisible and everything physical is you can touch and feel, but you can experience it. You're engaging with it or interacting with it. Does that make sense, or did I just make it more confusing? And you're like, yes, I made it more confusing. Thank you. So actually, we're going to dive in because there's some things, and we can go back to unity and multiplicity. There's some of that built into here. There's some of the what Ernest Holmes wrote about cause and effect a couple pages earlier that is summarized here, even though he doesn't use those terms. So let's jump in really early, and then we can always go back.
Trying to throw those curveballs.
No, it's like, wake up, Ryan. I know, normally I'd wait about 5 more minutes, but no, let's go.
Well, you caught me at a great time because I love this conversation and I want you to be a part of it. So I'll give the housekeeping rules. We're offering the experience to engage with us both online and in person here. So there's a couple things to remember. For the folks I'm waving to right now, you will be shown on camera. So if you would not like to, you can sit over here to my side, or you can also raise your hand either direction, and I guess myself or Richard, the iconic Richard, I should say, will help bring a microphone to you. And sharing is caring here at CSLDallas, so we encourage you to hand the microphone off to a friend when you see their hand raised. And for those who are joining us online via Zoom, you can do the same. You can hit the raise your hand icon located down below, and I can pull you into the room. As well as for those who are on Facebook Live, we see you all over the globe, so thank you for joining us, community, today. And you can put your questions and comments inside of the chat, and I can bring those into the room as well. And for the folks on Zoom and Facebook, I do leave the chats anonymous. That way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So back to you, Dr. Tracy Brown. Do you want to reiterate the question and see if we have anybody here in the room?
I do. So did any of that make any sense? Did you have any questions, or what is it about it that makes sense to you? Like, how do you relate to it? So that's just like, let's talk a little bit, and then I can go back and know better what I might need to explain a little bit more. So how about if we start online?
Sure. I do see a question here in the chat, so I'll read it. If everything is created from, by, spirit, why is it possible for anything created, even by my own thoughts and perceptions, to be less than perfect?
Repeat it.
If everything is created from or by spirit, why is it possible for anything created, even my own thoughts and my own perceptions, to be less than perfect?
It's not possible.
Hey, you gotta get... And
everything that we, in quotes, create is perfect. We are the ones who put judgment on it and say, that was bad, that's good, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. So it's perfect because, you know, we teach in classes, and we've already covered it a little bit in the beginning, in the introductory chapters, and it'll come up several times as we go through the textbook. The creative process is spirit in action. And it's us modeling that process or co-creating with the universe. And so whatever we think consistently, frequently, our dominant thoughts, whatever intention we set, the universe is perfectly working to deliver that. So it is perfect. We have chosen. That is also why we can choose again if our choices are not revealing or delivering a life experience that we want. We can choose differently and begin to move in a different direction, and the universe is working perfectly. So the universe, spirit, God, it has no judgment. It's, tell me what you want, this is what will be delivered. What type of experience you want to have, what type of energetic you want to have in the world. And so what I create is perfect. And it doesn't mean it's permanent. It's perfect, but it is not permanent. I can make a different choice. Ryan?
And I guess we're going to go to Willie here in the room.
Oh.
I'm Willie. So perfection is a perception. Depends on how you're looking at it. I remember one time, I have a deaf daughter, and growing up, she had a best friend who was also deaf. And so her mother, me, and the two kids went to Galveston one weekend, and we were driving back and just chatting. They were in the back seat and we were in the front, and we were just chatting. They couldn't hear what we said. And she said to me, the hardest thing for me was accepting the fact that I created something less than perfect. And I went, oh my God, I have never, ever thought that in my entire life.
Yes. Yes. So our human perception and our human choice and all of our socialization based on all the ads that we see and all the things that people tell us and what our teachers told us when we were 6 years old or 12 years old, all of that is going in our brain, and we may interpret or perceive that because it's not quote unquote perfect, it's not good. But in reality, it is perfect. It's a perfect demonstration of what I've been thinking or what the collective consciousness in the world is thinking and choosing. And I'm pretty consistent in adding that piece because it's easy to incorrectly slip into the idea that I personally am causing everything that happens to me to happen. And the reality is, yes, our thoughts and our intentions are shaping and influencing the experience we have. Yes. And at the same time, everything I think and intend has an effect beyond my personal experience. I'm also contributing to the world, the idea that I can have a happy life or that a happy life or a joy-filled life is possible. There are other people in the world that are influencing our overall experience, which is why we have societal conditions like homophobia or racism or global warming or cancer at the rates that we experience cancer in the human race, because collectively we have bought into a belief that being sick is normal, right? And that's why we have doctors and hospitals and all of that, which is true. But at the level that we have bought into it, we have to be careful that just because I have a certain diagnosis, it doesn't necessarily mean, well, what's in your consciousness, Tracy, that you chose that diagnosis, right? So we're talking about consciousness on both the individual level and the collective level. And back to this idea that someone is not perfect just the way they are, because there's this other image that society has portrayed. Ryan.
Yes, I see Marjorie's got her hand raised here on Zoom. So I'm
Great.
going to go ahead and unmute her.
It's Marjorie. Good morning.
Mute yourself and join us.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I love this topic. So I'm reminded of the saying, as above, so below, as below, so above, as within, so without, so without, so within. And I would also add, as upside down, inside out, kind of thing too. But I guess my question around this creative intelligence. So it sounds like from what this paragraph is saying, it feels a little bit like we were created and then we were kind of left to our own individual consciousness to create. But I also feel like, I think that's a yes, and I think that we are as spirit. So we are here in form as spirit. And so to me, it's like spirit is who or what is creating through me, as me, in me. And I am like the instrument through which it comes. You know, kind of like when you look at someone like Mozart, for example, that genius of a guy. To me, that was like pure spirit just coming right directly through him as a young child. I mean, you know, it was like he was just so gifted that came directly through him. And so I kind of wanted to put that piece and ask your feedback on how is that contrasting, or is it a both and, where we are individuals creating as human beings, with our own individual consciousness, and we are also the empty vessel through which spirit creates.
Yes, and yes, and yes. So in Science of Mind, we are pretty consistent in teaching that we are co-creating with or as spirit. So it depends on grounded, how much of the foundation of Science of Mind you or a person has kind of been inundated to, whether they will lean toward the word with spirit, co-creating with spirit, or co-creating as spirit. So the longer that you, not necessarily longer that you study Science of Mind, but diving more deeply into it, what you realize, many people begin to realize is that, yes, I am an individual expression of this one infinite intelligence or this creator or this source or the universe. But I am tapping into that mind in order to create around me, in order to create based on the experience I'm in, the experience I'm having, the conditions that I am facing. So it's not, I love Marjorie, when you start it, it's like, well, we've been created and then left alone. There's a part that Ernest Holmes talks about for all of us in the human condition. He does this about 4 different times in the book that I can immediately recall, where he makes it clear that because humanity has been created with free will, that we are discovering that we have to discover our connection to spirit. That the oneness is there, it always has been, it always will be, but we have to discover it and then choose to use it. So the quote we use often from Ernest Holmes, there's a power for good in the universe. It is available to all and we can use it. We're really clear. We are simply using that infinite power and intelligence that is available to all, but we choose to use it in a conscious and intentional way in order to create lives that work for us in the human condition or the human environment that we find ourselves in. And that is what makes it possible to be clear that we are all using the same principles, the same stuff, but it will show up differently, or the values and socialization will show up differently in China than it does in Costa Rica, and different in Costa Rica than it does in Detroit, and different in Detroit than it does in the Antarctica. Right, because the physical conditions and the societal collective consciousness is different, but we're all using the same thing. Spirit is not different in all of those different places. Our use of spirit is not different. We're just making different choices based on the human conditions that we are finding ourselves in or creating. Anybody else in the room before we go back online? Ryan.
All right, I see Armando here. Armando, would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself and join us?
Good morning.
Good morning.
This kind of reminds me of an experience that I recently had that I also had shared with you earlier. So in the last few months, I'm living really what I say is my best life. And I'm realizing that I want more greatness and more in my life. And I've been estranged from my siblings for quite some time and my nieces. And I started writing and journaling, writing gratitude that we all came together. Slowly, everything unfolded. It was my mom's 80th birthday. My mom's wish was to have all 4 of her kids together on a trip. And so for the first time in probably over 2 decades, that we were all together. It was a leap of faith for me. I was nervous, didn't know what to expect, but I did know that I did trust in the process and that I believed that I was ready for healing for myself. And that was really what it was about. There was that void, and I got to fill that void. Now, did it change everything at the end? No, I mean, everybody goes back to do what they do. That's okay, because I'm at peace, and it made my mom happy. But it was also about, it still brought everybody together, you know, even if it was just for 4 days. But I got to experience a lot of freedom.
What a beautiful example, and I don't want anyone to miss the piece that you just kind of snuck in there. I had a desire, and I began journaling about it. That piece is so foundational to the actual experience. And so foundational to where you kind of began to summarize that, okay, it was 4 days and then everybody goes back to their own places. Maybe there'll still be some drama or tension or dis-ease, but I am at peace, right? I am at peace because I'm in my own process around this. And I did my spiritual practice, and I was ready to step into the unknown, and I am at peace. It's a big, big deal. And this last section of a divine mental picture, even though in this chapter, the primary focus for the chapter is what's happening on the universal level. It's a great example, Armando, of how when we start bringing it to our human experience, it shows up. Side note, starting next week with Dr. Petra, we actually start getting in the book to the place where we will focus a lot on how we actually live these principles. So those first 5 chapters, the 4 introductory chapters. So we've done 9 chapters that are really, how do we understand this big thing called spirit, called God, called the universe, called life? But next week we'll start into humanity's relationship to the spiritual universe. And so we start getting into that. And then after a few chapters into really man or humanity living it purely. So that's a really great bridge. Thank you, Armando, for sharing that.
Doesn't look like I have anybody else. Did you want to round us out with the end of the chapter before we move on to more questions?
That is the end of the chapter, but what I want to do is I do want to go back to cause and effect and unity and multiplicity. So pages 101 through 103, maybe the top of 104. Not to reread any of it, but you know, when we're going through these section by section, we are building and building and building. However, when we're on that particular part, it sometimes can seem like I don't have anything to hook it to. Like I'm taking the next step, but it kind of doesn't make sense. So I love that Ernest Holmes ends this chapter with the reminder that there is a divine mental picture, not fate, not deciding for you what your life is going to be. But there is a mental picture, and that is creating life and expanding life and evolving life. And sometimes it is doing that as nature itself, and sometimes it is doing that, as Marjorie suggested, through us and our choices. So go back to cause and effect, which is, again, that part of this chapter where Ernest Holmes really goes through and says, there is a cause, there is a mental cause for every effect. And I'm saying effect, where normally in conversation I just say effect, and I'm saying effect to articulate that we really are talking about effect, not affect or affect, right? So the effect or the form or the form that the manifestation takes or the form that the creation delivers itself in is always an effect. And so if there's only one thing that you remember from that section, it's this idea that if you are experiencing it, if you are interacting with it, it is an effect. And the cause is invisible mental. Every effect has a mental cause, a thought or an intention that gets expressed. So if you don't remember anything else, remember that. And then with multiplicity, unity and multiplicity, the thing to remember, if everything is an effect, and then look in this room or look, think about all the people that you see in videos and things like that online. Everyone's an individual. Everyone is an individual expression. An example of the infinite possibilities of the ways humanity can express. Every grain of sand is an individual grain of sand that comes together to create a beach. But every individual grain is unique. Every snowflake. Luckily, we don't have a lot of snowstorms here in Dallas, but when they happen, it's easy to look out the window and just see a yard or a parking lot covered in white, and we say it's snow. But if you were to look at each individual snowflake, it's different. And so snow is snow in its unity, but every individual snowflake represents the multiplicity that it takes to come together as a mass. And humanity is the same way. So they're not the same thing, but multiplicity means there's individuation in whatever the group identity is. Okay, Ryan, what do you have?
Well, before I go to Shauna, I did see this comment in here, and I think it is an important comment. It says, "The world needs more Tracy Brown." Anybody agree with me on that? Okay, good. So Shauna, would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself and join us?
Good morning.
Hey,
Good morning.
Shauna.
Morning, Dr. Brown. So listening this morning just reminds me of a place that I sort of moved back and forth from just because of, my background. So backstory, I'll tell it really quickly. So I had a party last night of 20 people, and I live in a townhome on lake facing. And so really, and the bottom floor is basically just one great room. But to put 20 people in there, it's a lot because it's not that big a townhome. So really, for a party of 20, I used my patio, on the lake as an extension of the house. Well, it was actually, the excuse was to celebrate my birthday, but it was actually just to bring all the people I loved, together. And my birthday is early in April, but, April is a rainy month, so I put it to the end of April, hoping I would have great weather. Well, all week, this storm was being predicted. And even at noon, it was still predicted that it was just going to be storming at 5 and 6. And all week, I held this mental picture of my loved ones out on the patio, because that's really what they love the most. You know, listening to the ducks, being outside. I just kept this mental picture. And even at noon yesterday, it said it was going to be, you know, windy and rainy. And 5 o'clock comes along, and it's a little windy and clear. And half of the party was out on the patio the whole time. And then that storm that was supposed to be, you know, came in the middle of the night. And of course, I was just yesterday evening being so grateful. But I'm listening this morning, and I realized that where I have a hard time, I'm not going to say that, where I waffle between is maintaining my mental equivalent, which I really did. I saw my beloved friends on the patio, you know, loving on each other and loving on nature and loving on the ducks. And yet I also moved to the with. I was creating with, not creating as, right? So I held the mental picture creating as, but I know I also went back to my old, you know, uprising of creating with somebody, you know, or not somebody, but with a more of an external divine, right? And I guess the question is, how can I, what can I do that more frequently just helps me stay in my mental equivalent, knowing that it's working through me? Because I know even after all these years of practicing, you know, not all that much years, I started, anyway.
A lot of years. A lot of years. So this is such a good question for this reason. It gives me the opportunity to say, congratulations, you are human. Congratulations. The question, what can I do to more consistently stay with my mental equivalent, or to stay focused on what I want to have happen? Or what can I do to more consistently think about what I want and not what I don't want? The answer to this is so easy. The only thing that, really the only thing that we can do is practice. We can't wait until something happens that we don't want and then all of a sudden practice then and expect like magic. It doesn't work that way. Now, it can work that way depending on the energetic, and, we've all read or heard stories of someone who is in a major emergency, a mother lifting a car off of her child, having the strength to do that, or someone in a really bad car accident who, in the moment is like, Jesus, take the wheel, or, just, oh, God, help me. And because the emotion level is high and all of that, things do happen. But in general, in our lives, with planning parties and working out and moving or looking for a new job, in the normal capacity of our lives, what we do is practice. The more we practice, the more we see the benefit, the more we believe in the benefit, the deeper our faith is and our trust in our self, our lowercase s self and our capital S spiritual self. We train ourselves to trust. And so it is the constant work that we know would have to be done. If we set a goal that was kind of very physical, or I want to lose 50 pounds, then I know I'm not going to wake up tomorrow having lost 50 pounds. Right? I'm going to make different food choices. I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to get a workout program, or I'm going to hire a trainer. And 3 times a week, I'm checking in with someone, or right? I join Weight Watch. I do something. Our spiritual practice is just like that. If I am addicted to alcohol or drugs or food or shopping, and I want to change that pattern because I see that pattern's getting in my way, I don't say, I'm going to think about being, about not drinking alcohol. No, I go to an AA meeting every day or 5 days a week, or I go to, and I get a sponsor and a mentor to help me, and I make choices every day. So our spiritual practice is like that. And Shauna, that's such a beautiful example, that all of us listening to you can say, we can thank Shauna for the fact that we were able to hang out and do some cool things yesterday evening, and the rain didn't come until, 3 in the morning to wake me up. But it's like our lives seem magical in that way when we're using our spiritual practice. So use your spiritual practice. Use it, use it, use it. And many of you in the room and online know that we teach a specific affirmative prayer process that we refer to as spiritual mind treatment. And it's the same thing, whether you are journaling, as Armando said, whether you are meditating, whether you are setting a clear intention, whether you are doing a spiritual mind treatment or just using affirmations, you have to use it. Dr. Johnny Coleman, who is the founder of the Universal Foundation for Better Living, is quoted. It's a phrase that many people use, but she used it so much that people now attribute it to her, and she wrote a book titled, "It Works If You Work It." It works if you work it. And you have to mean it. You can't play. So, okay, I won't use that example. Before we close, Ryan, do you have anybody else, and do you have any announcements?
Well, yes, and on that note, I just wanted to throw in there too, it's about having compassion along that way for yourself in that humanness. That was put inside of the chat as well, and I think that's a big part to it as you're going along the way, is to realize that you're human and that you have to love yourself along that path.
Compassion, we could do a whole day just on compassion.
Yes, and if you're having some issues in that arena, well, then today is your lucky day, because not only do we have the fantastic Jamie Lula hailing out of LA, coming to us live in about 30 minutes, but he also will be hosting a forgiveness workshop, both online and here in person at the campus. So it's a great way to dive in with a master teacher on how to forgive yourself and forgive others and move in a more compassionate way in your life. And I'll put the link to that in the chat below so you guys can join us online. Also, I want to make mention that there's 2 programs that are ending out this month, so you got to make sure to pay attention and make sure you're signed up for our email list. But Divine Dining, the last day of bidding is going to be today. It's a fun theme party that you get to bid on, and the proceeds go to your spiritual community here. So it's really awesome. You should definitely check it out here at the table, or there's a link online that I'll post in the chat as well. And the other one is host registrations for our Journey to Awakening program. And this program's going to be starting in June. Registrations for it is going to open up next Sunday. But we are looking for hosts, and it can be done online and in person, and it's a great opportunity to meet others, and all the material, everything's provided, so you don't have to worry about it. And it's a great way to join others on a journey of spiritual awakening. So just wanted to throw those things out there.
Yeah, and these groups are so important. for building community. You know, if you come to class and you're online, or if you're even in the room, it's like when we're together, we get to know people individually. And so I really can't encourage you enough. The fact that we are having some groups hosted online is amazing, not just for our people all over the globe, but for our local folks who live a far away from our physical campus and want to meet people from all over. So please join that. We are done with chapter 5, body. And please join us next Sunday. Dr. Petra will be back from her adventures in South America, and we'll be starting with chapter 6. My name's Tracy Brown, and I encourage you to read the Science of Mind textbook throughout the week, but definitely join us here on Sunday mornings. Bye for now.